Hi, I'm Jimmy Bui. I'm Vietnamese American, and I'm a sophomore management major in constitutional economics.
Hi, my name is Susana Tran. I'm Vietnamese American. I was born in Massachusetts in the United States, and I was raised in Boston.
My name is Kenny Zoe. I'm a second year at UMass Boston, computer science major. I have parents that were born in China and immigrated to the United States, but I was born here.
My name's Sophia Moore. I'm a graduate student here at UMass Boston, majoring in exercise and health sciences. I'm in my first year, second semester of the graduate program, and I am half Asian American.
Hello, so my name is Miho. I identify myself as Vietnamese American.
So I'm MG Zhang. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska, and now I live in Boston going to UMass. And I am a Hmong American.
My thoughts about the lack of ethnic studies in many schools is that I feel like it would be very beneficial to have those sort of ethnic studies so that we can understand more about the world itself and its culture, and generally like understand where people come from. I feel like that's really important.
I feel like the lack of education. Well, first thing I think of is like history class from high school, where we were taught like certain topics, and then it was just like brushed under the rug. Like, okay, we're moving on. So there definitely is a lack of education there, and it makes you wonder why. Kind of leaves you like this empty feeling, like something's not right. It seems a little sketchy as to why they're covering it up so much.
I think the lack of Asian American representation, histories in both schools, it's damaging, and it's not really inclusive of like various types of Asian history.
It does seem pretty unfair that, at least from my education of going to Boston schools and a Boston public high school, that's also an exam school, that most of the focus was on American history, but mostly from the African American and the white perspective, and not really any of the other minorities, like at all. It just seems kind of appalling how little is said or is known about all these different people's histories.
Asian American studies or ethnic studies are so important because when I was in school at Boston Land Academy, a lot of the study that we learn is very like predominantly, white, and for the white institution, and so we learn a lot of like Western history about like the even I don't remember what we learned because it's so dominant, and so I feel like there needs to be more ethnic study class, because I think in this world a lot of people are very ignorant, and it's not their fault, it's just that the institution is placed to the point where they're brainwashed, and yeah, so I think there needs to be a lot more.
Yeah, I think especially growing up like in primary public school, anyone that's also identified as Hmong, you would never read about them in a history textbook anywhere. And I think especially this was like eye-opening when I went on a school trip my junior year of high school to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. And I knew that, of course, there should be listed people that share the same last name as me. I knew of family and ancestors that fought alongside the United States, and so in theory I would have expected to see my last name up on those plaques in DC, and so I was very disappointed but not surprised to find out that there weren't any Hmong names on there. And so there's just widespread lack of acknowledgement and appreciation for Asian American people and their contributions, but also just their existence.
I feel as though I have come into troubles with speaking about these issues about mental health, politics, abortion, sexuality, just because it feels as though there aren't really things to be talked about, especially I feel like I would definitely speak less about this towards like a family member because they're kind of driven to think about success in the workforce and the economy, and I feel like these sort of topics about sexuality, mental health, they're like less in the way of that.
Yes, so I have been part of taboo topics in the Asian American community, although most times I'm talking about those taboo topics with people who I really care about and understand that they are open-minded to my topics, that they'll consider understanding my perspective, or I'll talk to people who I feel are not understanding of it, but they are somebody who I care about deeply enough that I feel like they are somebody worth explaining to.
I think that all those things that you said, I think it comes from fear, and people are really scared and afraid of things that they don't know of. And so it's also a way for people who are in higher power to really control how people feel and think. And so things that are taboo are not really taboo because they're just socially constructed to view as taboo.
Yeah, I think a huge kind of incident of talking about taboo conversations was just like medicine and science, especially when the pandemic first started. I know that there are, like at least for me, a lot of Hmong people that, Hmong people are typically either like Christian or shaman and like traditional Hmong, and so there is a lot of a rejection of like Western medicine and more focus on like cultural healing and practices, which I love, admire, and respect, and also know that the vaccine is the vaccine, and that it is our like protection against COVID. And so this kind of blew up this time last year when my aunt had tested positive for COVID, and it was a really severe case because she hadn't gotten any vaccines, and she ended up having to be put in a medically induced coma for from April until July. And so we were very unsure if she would make it out alive. And so back home, I was here, and so I wasn't able to be that involved, but I was able to go back home in May and also talk with my aunt over like FaceTime, even if she wasn't awake to respond. And so anyway, all that's to say is that really highlighting my aunt's story of what happens when, culture and science can't really coexist, and we're not talking about these things, and not only are we not talking about them, but we're actively pushing them away. We highlighted my aunt's story to create or set up a clinic for largely the Hmong population to be informed and have accessible information that's actually translated into not only the language that they understand and speak and communicate in, but also having the cultural awareness of, respecting traditional ways of healing, and knowing that, when it came to COVID, especially without a vaccine, it is a matter of life and death. And so that was very difficult conversations that we were bridging and trying to have, despite how taboo they were within our culture.
The way we could remove the stigmas towards these quote unquote taboo topics is to just talk about it more. Like, why does it have to be taboo? It doesn't need to be taboo. It's not taboo. It's a very human thing to go through all these sorts of issues and problems. And the only way we can face these issues and problems and situations is to normalize it and talk about it by talking about it.
I think that when it comes to the question, in order to get rid of stigma or stereotypes, it's really important to fund community programs to provide access to resources for youth who view themselves as leader. And so once they do the leadership program, they take what they learn and then they go to college, they learn more about how to be an adult, how to think critically, and then they come back to the community and to contribute back to the community. So I think that's why it's really important.
I think really connecting through conversation can bridge the divides and begin a very important conversation to see where else we need to go from here.